too much about how we manage to cover all these topics. That said, this is not a hands-on training. So while in a parallel universe, it would have been wonderful to have a 5-hour session where you get the chance to practice all these things, we have to make the best of what we do. The important takeaway for all of you, the most important one, is to be aware of what is happening in the world of spreadsheet and data analytics out there pertaining to Excel. That's number one. Number two, for you to see actually what type of projects are done and how they look. The first thing is to know the keywords. What is Power FX? What is DAX? What is Power Apps? What is JavaScript doing in Excel? Stuff like that. And then finally is the hands-on learning. Hands-on learning is overrated. Hands-on learning is actually the simplest part, isn't it? Because hands-on learning can always be learned self by YouTube or pursuing an online course or asking questions to others. But if you don't even know what to prioritize on and what to learn, then where do you start? Like, it's very cute when people say advanced Excel, but what does that even mean? Because advanced Excel means very different things for different people. So very quickly, I'll share my background in 2 minutes to give you a sense of what I do and what is the ratio of data analytics and data science that is there in my firm, what type of clients I work with. So you can also chart your own journey and see if this is the type of work that you would be interested in. So I run a firm called Havisham Consulting. I have two parts to my business. There is the corporate side and the B Schools side. B Schools is not a lot. It's about 15-20% of my revenue. Is something that I'm passionate about, and it happens to earn me some money, but that is not really something where I'm scaling the business, right? So the core business is working with organizations for both training and consulting work. So I work with two of the big fours. I work with some investment banking firms, sector agnostic across multiple industries and sectors. And my work is always top down. So I work with CXOs for strategic level exercises across the organization. So these are fairly large projects that I work on. All right. Now, in terms of my background, I am a commerce student with an MBA in marketing. I am from 2007, 2009. And I started teaching myself coding in 2014 when I was 27, right? So, I mean, I was very late to the party and I had absolutely no idea of how I'm going to do it, how much time it will take me, and how, challenging that journey is going to be. But I hit a ceiling because I had been working on Excel ever since school and I loved it and I was very good at it, like extremely good at it. But then I hit a ceiling because I realized that if I don't learn how to code, then I can't cross that ceiling in Excel. I will always be a very good Excel user with that caveat that I do not know how to code. And that is something I will come back to again and again during today's discussion, which is that you have to learn to code. It's not a question of should I or shouldn't I. You all have to. Like it, hate it, it doesn't matter. You have to learn it. The question is more on the lines of how do you learn it and what should you be learning? Should you be learning Python or VBA or R or maybe something else entirely, right? But the underlying statement here is you have to learn how to code, right? Goes without saying, right? So the things that we're going to talk about today are the different components in Excel. Oh, so by the way, I'm an Excel Office Master. I am a Microsoft certified trainer. I am a Power BI data analyst associate, and Havisham Consulting is a Microsoft partner. So as you can see, I'm in love with Microsoft, and Microsoft loves me in return. So the different components of Excel are formulas and functions plus VBA. Now this is where most of you work, right? So formulas and functions is where all of you say advanced Excel, when you work with, I don't know, indirect or offset or match or maybe some advanced statistical functions, stuff like that. This is not Excel. This is a very small part of Excel, right? In Excel, there are 5 different components. So we have formulas and functions, which include every possible function that you can imagine. So the 600 odd functions that are there. And then, of course, we have VBA. After that, you have Power Query, which uses a language called M. Power Query is the ETL tool in Excel. It is also used in Power BI and it is also available on the cloud. Then you have Power Pivot, not available on the cloud. It is available on Power BI. It is the relational database similar to SQL that you can create in uh, using DAX in Excel and Power BI. Then you have Script Editor, which is the VBA alternative that you have for the cloud, because VBA does not work on the cloud, being a very old language. And there you're working on TypeScript, which is a language based on JavaScript, little different, but fundamentally syntactically the same as JavaScript. And then I will also talk about something else, which is not really a part of Excel, but it's a derivative of Excel. So PowerFX is a new language, which is used in certain Microsoft platforms, including Power Apps and Power Automate, which use a language which is a low code language, which means that it's not zero coding, it's not a lot of coding, but it's low coding. So with minimal coding, you can create applications. And Power Apps and Power Automate are two of the big platforms that are using it. Okay, so quickly starting with the first problem statement. So here's a question for all of you. If I write hello and I write world, and if I say sum of length of L2 and L3, is there anything wrong with how I have used the functions? We all know length, right? So length would be the number of characters, sum would be a summation. So is there anything wrong with the way I have used the functions? You can even unmute yourself, right? If you feel it is quicker, or you can put it on the chat window. I will keep an eye on the chat window, however you're comfortable. Take a wild, guess. What do you think? Do you think there's something wrong with the way the functions have been written?
Is it, I don't know, I haven't used it, but is it the brackets, that parentheses?
The brackets are correct. So you can, you can take my word for it. The parentheses, these are not brackets, by the way. So everybody, yeah, these are brackets, these are parentheses, and these are your curly brackets or curly braces, right? All three mean different things. See, the problem is that when I write a function like SUMIF, the first argument is range. That means that I have to select a range of values, correct? And let me just quickly see the questions once. Okay, so L2 to L3 might not work for length, absolutely. Yeah, so you're bang on target. The problem is that SUMIF can accept a range of values, but sum can also accept multiple numbers or a range, but length can only accept a single text. That means it has to be a single cell. It cannot be a range of cells. So what do you think will happen when I say length of B2 and B3? Or for that matter, what will happen when I say length of L2 and L3? What do you think will happen?
Might give an error in value.
Yeah, so absolutely. So that's how it used to work. But with the introduction of something called dynamic arrays, which is a concept we use in programming, which is now available even in Excel, Excel has now become smart enough to know that since there are two results that are going to come, one for hello and the other for world, it will spill the result into two cells. Right? Now, how does it work? It works because Excel is taking the call to decide on its own that since I can't show Havish two results in the same cell, I'm going to show it in two different cells. And if you can see this rectangle that is appearing around these two cells, that is telling me that this is a special formula that I've written, which is spilling into two cells. So if you look at the formula bar, the first cell formula is in black color, which it always is. That means that this is where you have written the formula. But the second cell formula is in a gray color. This means that there is no formula in that cell, right? So even if I press delete, nothing will happen because there is nothing that I've written there, correct? But if I write a value here, let's say there's a stray value here, now it will give me a spill error, which tells me that Havish, you gave me something, but what you have told me to do requires two cells to present the output. And I can't show you two outputs because there is already a value in the second item, in the second cell, and I can't take the call to overwrite it, obviously. How can Excel decide what to overwrite, what not to? But the moment I delete it, it comes. This feature is called dynamic arrays. I've shared the link with you. Dynamic arrays are very new. Excel was launched in 1986. It's 35, 36 years old. And dynamic arrays are only 2 years old. And dynamic arrays is not available on Office 2016. It is not even available on Office 2019. Dynamic arrays are only available on Microsoft 365, which is the cloud-based subscription for Microsoft. So if you want to have all these latest features, you have to pony up 420 rupees a month and get Microsoft 365. Office 2019 will also not have all this. It is expected that in Office 2021, which will be launched very soon, dynamic arrays would be introduced, but probably not all of them. So if you want to have the latest set of features, you need to have Microsoft 365 with you. Yeah, so Shikhar, we all have seen the spill error for the first time because that only happens when we use the dynamic array. Okay, now quickly tell me, how do you find the profit margin for these transactions? What do I write? Equal to first transaction, $62 is the profit, 221 is the sales. So numerator is C3, denominator is B3, correct? Then I have to copy it in all the cells, right? Then I have to say average of these cells, which gives me 14.95%, right? Now, with the learning that we have of dynamic arrays, can somebody tell me how to write a single formula to get the same result? This is what we did. First, we did profit by sales. We copy the formula down. Then we set the average of all these numbers, right? What do you think is the alternative if I want to use a single function, single formula to get the same result?
Average of C3 to C12 by B3 to B12.
Absolutely. So first, we'll do the average later because the average only comes into effect later, right? So as per the BODMAS rule, if you extend it, the nested function says that an average will happen later. First, I have to define C3 by C12 divided by B3 by B12. Now, if you try to do the same thing on your computer, it will give you an error because this is not how Excel is supposed to work, right? You can't divide multiple cells with multiple cells. That just doesn't make any sense. But with the power of dynamic arrays, you will get multiple values. And since you have multiple items in the array, you can simply do an average. Much more efficient, isn't it? Now imagine in financial modeling, which is where I spend a lot of my work, or a lot of my time and do a lot of work. Imagine how much this can help. I mean, I'm not even talking about creating better models. I'm just talking about saving time. Look at the turnaround time and the efficiency of doing all this. Right? Okay. Now let's extend this logic of dynamic arrays to a new problem statement. What we have here is a set of records. So I have these 18 records with me. There are 3 types of shipping mode. We have standard class, first class, second class, and then we also have the customer name and the corresponding sales amount. I give you the data and I say, can you tell me out of these 18 records, how many are standard class? Like basically extract only those rows which are standard class. Quickly tell me, what would you do? If I give you a data set and I ask you, I'm giving you 18 rows, give me back only the rows which have standard class in it. What would you do? We would apply a, no. Abhinav, we don't want to count them. We actually want to see the entire record. So we want to extract them. So we have to do, Abhishek, no, not a VLOOKUP, a filter, right? Everyone, we do a sort and filter. So we simply say, okay, there are 18 rows. Havish wants to see only the standard class. So this is the standard class. Next, I ask you, okay, which is the first class? You will again have to go and say first class. This is how everybody, there are 1 billion people in the world who use Excel. This is how everybody does it, right? And this is how we have been doing it for so many years. I mean, I have been doing it for 2 decades now because there was no other way of doing it. Rashi, a pivot, yes, can work, but a pivot I feel is too much hassle for a task like this. And also a pivot is not dynamic in the sense that if it's a function, if the data changes, it changes automatically. A pivot means that every time new data comes in, you have to either refresh the pivot and create the data. Not very efficient. So I want to use a function called filter. As the name suggests, it's a filter function. We have a set of 18 values, out of which we want to extract a subset, which is only the standard class records. But before I explain that, tell me what will be the result of this. Think about it, take a minute, take about 30 seconds and tell me what do you expect the answer would be. If I say B10, B27 equal to F3, what do you think the answer will be? Okay, Salman, not the number of standard class because we have never said we want to count something, correct? Shashank and Abhinav, you're absolutely correct. So it will give me a binary result. It will say, is B10 equal to F3? Yes. Is B11 equal to F3? Yes. Same for B12, but B13 is not equal to F3. So it gives me a list of binary results, which is true and false. Obviously, all that I have to do now is I have to check out of these 18 rows, how many rows are true and how many rows are false, because we are only interested in the true rows, not in the false rows. So all I have to do is I have to say, okay, now let me filter this entire data of 3 columns. And what is the inclusion criteria? We only want to filter out those rows where the value is true, and the result will be only standard class. And if I come here and I say, okay, first class, it will give me first class. Super cool, right? Huge time saver. It's not really a model in the sense that we're not really doing any analysis or any calculations or any scenarios, but in just the point of, which is the third most used function in the world. The most used function in the world is sum, followed by average, and the third is VLOOKUP. That tells you something, doesn't it? That VLOOKUP is like the bread and butter of Excel. Everybody, no matter who you are, I work with CXOs day in and day out. I see CXOs literally opening an Excel and writing VLOOKUP. Why? Because VLOOKUP is what you need. You get the data from SAP. How will you extract what you need? You have to use VLOOKUP, right? Filter is a fantastic tool that is going to save people so much time in its ability to be able to give you a set, identify a set and give you a subset of the data. Right? Any questions on this?
Havish, I had a question, and it's actually regarding to the dynamic arrays. I just realized that if we select the number of rows or the columns we are wanting, and we do a Control-Shift-Enter after.
Oh no. So that has been deprecated now. So while you can still use Control-Shift-Enter if you want to, you don't need to, because dynamic arrays will work automatically.
Okay.
So it hasn't been discontinued, right? So you can still use it, right? If I may just show it to everybody once. If I say equal to, please watch. No, first I have to select all the cells. This is how we used to do it, pre-dynamic arrays. This was like very advanced Excel. Very few people knew this. You have to write equal to, select all the cells, equal to, select profit, divided by sales, and then you have to press Control-Shift-Enter. You will get the same results, but if you look at the formula bar, everybody, do you see this curly bracket that is coming in the front and at the end? This is how you identify what we used to call array formula. Very complex to use. It was riddled with issues, and you couldn't use it because en masse people were not using it. Even if you use it, your clients will not use it. So who will go and start explaining it to people? Because now you can't delete a value. You can't delete a value because it's a part of an array, right? So don't learn it, because this is already old stuff, and there is no reason for learning arrays now. If you know about it, great, but there is nothing that arrays can do which dynamic arrays cannot do. Let's be very clear, right? Okay, let me see the question.
Just before you move ahead, Havish, you have actually shared your desktop, I guess, so we are able to see the Zoom window on your screen as well. Will it be possible to share only the Excel so that the Zoom features are?
Hold on. That's strange. I always share my screen. No, but I'm sure the others were able to see it, right?
I guess everyone is able to see the Zoom as well, the Zoom features as well when you open your chat and stuff.
Okay, let me just understand that. So you're saying that you can see my Excel, but in addition to that, you can also see the chat window.
Yeah, the chat window and the Zoom screens. Can you just shift on to toggle onto the Excel now?
Okay, but I will have to go to some browsers and all as well. That's okay. I'll close my, hold on, just give me a moment.
I think you would have to remove that optimize for screen sharing and advanced if you are using that. So that would remove the Zoom screen share.
Wait. No, I'm not doing anything. The reason is I've minimized the, our pictures, our pretty pictures. The chat window I want to be visible because when I'm talking about something, I want the others to be able to see it. Plus, I'll be switching between a few applications, right? This works, right? What you have on the screen right now?
Yes, this works. Thank you.
All right, great. So we have filter, but the question is we have two more conditions in the filter. The first one was that the Suraj, I'll come to your question. The first one was that the shipping mode has to be first class. But there are two further conditions that the sales has to be between 0 and 400. I just have to expand on this formula. We'll have to multiply, if I may just zoom in a little bit. we'll have to say that the first array, which is my inclusion, which is a list of truth and false, has to be multiplied by another array, which would be my sales value, right? Let me also put a parentheses here. Sorry. And here we say that this has to be greater than equal to 0. So we say greater than equal to 0. And this is again multiplied by a final one, which is again D10 to D27, which is less than equal to this. Right, so let's try to understand what is happening before I press enter. What is B10, B27 equal to F3? A list of truths and false. What is D10, D27 greater than equal to 0? Again, a list of true and false. So you have 3 columns of true and false. And when will a true come? Only when all the 3 are true. So the result would be only those records which are meeting all the 3 criteria. So for example, if I can come back, let me just go to the appropriate zoom level. Perfect. So if I change it to standard class, right? And I say that there are right now a certain number of records with me, but I don't want to see all the records. I just want to see the ones that are minimum 200. I can make it 200 and the data gets filtered, right? So there are 3 conditions that we have kept: the type of shipping mode, the minimum sales amount, and the maximum sales amount, like this. So this is how you multiply multiple arrays. I don't know if anybody has used SumProduct earlier. SumProduct used to be like this very unique function in Excel, which used to be an array formula before array formulas were introduced. But SumProduct had a big limitation in the sense that it could only do a product. It could only multiply different columns, nothing else, right? With dynamic arrays, you can go crazy and build all sorts of models and functions that you always have been doing. Right. Any questions on this, anybody? Good. Okay. This is an example on how to create dynamic ranges and charts. Let me also answer the questions first. How is it different from a slicer? Suraj, it has nothing to do with the slicer, because slicers can only be created when you have a pivot table or when you have a table. And it's very seldom that you will have a table and a pivot table. If you're just working with a data set, then you can't use a slicer. You will have to use this parameter that we created along with the filter. So if we add some data rows, we will have to rewrite the range, right? I mean, yes, you will, but you can make that dynamic as well by using the indirect function, which will make the the rows dynamic. And also the thing is, if I can just show you, see, I've selected B10 to D27, correct? I can always make it 100. You understand what I'm doing, right? It doesn't matter if I select till the 100th row. I can also make it 10,000. This way, what will happen is you will still get the same result, and you have the opportunity to add more records in the future. Now, somebody might say, is this efficient? Is this how you do work? This is how everything happens in the corporate, right? All modeling, your question is appropriate. How do we make sure that new records are also added in the function? You just select an additional number of rows, more than what you will ever put values in, and this is how you would do it. Right? Hope that answers the question. Now this one, we want to look at dynamic charts, right? So we have a bunch of records, 100 transactions, and we have the sales amount and the profit, and we want to look at the correlation. All of us know what the correlation is, and we also know how to calculate it, which is simply Corel, right? So I'm just going to select column C and column D, and we get almost a 0 correlation. So I can say that there is very little correlation between profit and sales. The context is not important. Why is it 0 correlation? We don't want to get into analysis and all, right? From an Excel perspective, I want to show you how do you identify these values on a plot. Obviously, you can't make a regular chart, so we want to make a scatter plot. So we'll select and insert on charts. I want to select a scatter chart. So in all charts, we go to scatter, XY scatter, and we select the second one. On the X-axis, we have sales, and on the Y-axis, we have the profit, which is how it should be. Now, this is great, but the question is, it's not really dynamic, right? Like if you present it to the management and they say, fine, I can see the plot here, but can you just show me the plot for those values where the profit is more than 500? How do you do that? Because the problem is that in the data set, you have all the values. So you will say, okay, boss, I'll come here and I will go to number filters and I will say, okay, this has to be greater than whatever, let's say 200. Actually, there's nothing greater than 200. Let me make it 150. So let's say greater than 150. But then, the chart is not looking correct. And this is a manual process. Every time you have to essentially go back to the data set and do this. And you might not have the luxury of doing that, to go back to the original data set. So what we want is to make the chart dynamic. And to make the chart dynamic, we have to first make a dynamic array. This is not dynamic right now, correct? The sales and profit. So what we do is, let me just push it to the side and add some rows at the top. I will say profit should be greater than or equal to a certain number, right? So this is my parameter that we are creating. So we want to say that, okay, when the profit is greater than 150, what is the revised scatter plot? So that means the filter function definitely has to be kept. For the filter function, in the previous example, we selected all the 3 columns together as a unit. This time we want to select all the 3 separately, right? And the reason is because I want to have independent control over all the 3 columns. So we will say filter. What do we want to filter? I want to filter B7 to B106. There are 100 records. What is the inclusion criteria? That my profit, right? I'll also put a $sign here, is greater than or equal to H1, which is again a $sign. Obviously, out of the 100 records, not each one of them has a profit greater than 150. So the revised value will be like this. Obviously, when I change it to 100, the number increases. When I change it to 180, the number decreases, right? And then I can just copy it to the right for the sales and for the profit. That's why we put the $sign, so that I can copy the formula towards the right. Now what? Can I link my chart to this? Not really. Because how will the chart be dynamic? Now, to make these values dynamic, we'll have to do one other thing, which is, please watch. I will have to select these values. In fact, I just select the first cell, G7. Please look at the name box on the top left corner next to the formula bar. It says G7. When I say multiple cells, it says still G7. Isn't that odd? But that is how Excel works. When you select multiple cells, it always shows you the first cell, which is okay. But if I select till the last cell, look what happens. It shows you G7 hash. That hash is a new character in Excel that was only introduced when dynamic arrays were introduced. And I'm sure all of you can guess what it is doing. It tells you that G7 is the first item in that array. And hash means that it will select all the items in that array, no matter how many items there, whether it's 1 or 2 or 5 or 100. Which means that if I simply write equal to G7 hash, F7 hash, did you see what it did? When I write F7, it just selects F7. When I say F7 hash, it selects that entire range of values. And the best part is this is dynamic. So we don't have to define how many values are there in that array, right? But we have to still give it a name. I'll select formulas and name manager. Name manager is almost like a variable declaration, not exactly, but something like that. So we go to name and it's already here. So let me first delete whatever has been given. I'll create a new name and we will say that the name, okay, is sales. And what is it equal to? Now remember, it will be the correlation sheet, exclamation mark, G7 followed with a hash like this. Same thing we will do for profit as well. So I'll create a new name. Let's call this profit and this would be H7 with a hash. Now, how do we know that the names have been given correctly? Because when I write equal to sales anywhere, what will happen? It will show me all the sales value. Very cool, right? If I write equal to sum of sales, what will it do? It will show me the sum of sales values. We have combined dynamic arrays with a range name because we are giving a name to the range. Hence, we call it a range name. Now my chart has to be connected not to the cells directly, but to the range name. For this, we go to chart design, select data. And as you can see, it is already selecting something. But then I don't want to select C7106, D7106. I want to select correlation. And what should be on the x-axis? My profit. And what should be on the y-axis? It should be my sales value, right? And what will happen now? You notice that very coolly, it is now only going to show you the plot for the values that have been filtered out. So for example, if I make it 0, it shows everything. When I make it 100, it filters them out. When I make it 190, it filters them out, and you can identify the high profit values, the outliers that you have in the data. So something like this in Power BI or Tableau is super simple, right? In Tableau, you have something called a reference line, which can be combined with a parameter to make this. In Excel, you couldn't really do stuff like this earlier. We could, to be honest. Somehow, there was something called offset, which is still there. It's an advanced function in Excel. Offset somewhat allowed us to use a range name and make a dynamic chart, but then filter wasn't there. And filter is very important for something like this, what we are trying to do. Okay. Yeah. Any questions, anyone on this? Even if you have any general questions, you can ask. Okay, let me see the chart window, just a moment. The chart part, sure. So I select the chart, we go to chart design, and then we go to select data. From here, we have to click on edit. We are editing the series that we have. Okay. And then this has to be put manually, the profit and sales values, the range name. Right. So the process is, first we did a filter 3 times. Then we selected the value with the hash and gave 2 range names for sales and profit. Then with the chart that we created, we had to plug in the range names that we have given. Right. Okay. So you have seen a little bit of dynamic charts and dynamic arrays. Let's also look at an example on Visual Basic. So Visual Basic is in some ways a dead language, because I mean, if you Google dead languages, VBA always comes in the top 10 list. But then you have to understand that every Excel copy that is there on systems around the world, a billion systems, not a billion systems, but a billion people work on it. Everyone has VBA. Everybody has Visual Basic, whether you're working on Office 2003, 7, 10, 13, 16, 19, whichever one it is, right? VBA is not available on the cloud, though, because it can't work. It's a very old language. But VBA cannot die ever, because organizations, especially in finance and professional services, depend on VBA scripts so much that it is very difficult for them to port it over to a different language, right? Eventually, it will happen when web apps and JavaScript takes over. But then VBA is going to be there for the next 10, 15, 20 years easily, right? If not more. So anyway, I'm telling you all this so that that question does not come up. Should we learn it? Is it important? People are coming to us and telling us that we should not learn it. Absolute BS. Just do not listen to them. VBA is always a skill, especially if you're in finance, if you're in operations and supply chain, if you're in marketing and digital marketing, product manager, HR, then you might hold on to it as a skill set, as an acquired added skill set, which will help you earn some brownie points. But it's not like a must. But then if you're in finance, it is an absolute must, right? Even though I recommend everybody to learn it, especially if you haven't started your coding journey, this will be a good starting point for all of you. All right, so here's the problem, not a problem, but here's the situation. I want to create a user form which will allow me to plug in, to put in my name and GPA, click on a button, and it automatically plugs it into Excel. So rather than the user every time coming to the cell and putting a value, where the risk is that they might overwrite something, they might not put the data type correctly. Validations are there in Excel, but they are quite difficult, right? Plus, the user experience is horrible. I mean, there's no user experience that I have here. So let's see how we do this. For VBA, you need to have the developer tab, which is there with all of you, but it is not enabled. So this is there on all versions of Excel, okay? Unlike dynamic arrays. And to enable the developer tab, you have to go to File, then go to Options, go to Customize ribbon. And as you can see, the developer tab is there on all your systems. It's just disabled by default. Maybe just 1 out of 10,000 Excel users ever work on VBA, right? It's a very small number. And once you have the developer tab, you have an entire assortment of things that you can do. And let's see how we do this, right? So I first go to Visual Basic. Ignore this rubber duck. This is an add-in that I have put. It's a separate application. You will not see this, right? Okay, let me just clean it up a little bit so you don't get confused. 1 second. So this is your VBA window, right? This is your integrated development environment where you write code, right? As you can see, it's very 1990s looking because they haven't really updated it, right? Okay, so this is the sheet we have. We have problem. This is the workbook we have, and these are all the sheets we have, correct? But where is the user form? Where is that app that we want? Right click, insert, user form. And we very nicely get a user form here. In the user form, we want to make a few changes. So I want the name of the user form to be entry form. So in my caption and properties, we change it to entry form. I would also like to change the background color. So I will select and let's make the background color as blue, sort of my brand logo, my brand color. And on this, we need to have my image, my brand image. So we will, from our toolbox, we'll select an image and just draw it like this, just like you do it on PowerPoint. And then in my properties, we will go to picture so that from my system, I can select my logo. And we will also have to go to my picture size mode and set it to zoom. Right? Okay. Wonderful. We have done that. And let me also cancel this just a moment. Okay. And let me just make it a little nicer looking. Perfect. Now we need 2 boxes where the person will input the name and the GPA. So I will select text box 1. Let's call this text box txt underscore name. And we'll copy and paste it, Control C, Control V. And this one can be called as txt underscore GPA, right? We also need 2 labels. So I'll select labels so that the user will know what they have to enter here. I'll also change the background color to white. And let's call this as the caption will become name. Right, and let me just copy and paste this. I don't have a mouse right now, so I'll be a little slow. Please work with me, right? And this is the GPA, right? Perfect. But we also need a button, right, where the person will confirm what they have done. So we need a command button, a submit button, which is our command button here. So we'll select a button and we will create a nice big button here, and let's call this submit. And let's also change the color to something more striking. Let me select a yellow color. You only have 48 colors available, but you can use RGB values to create any color you want. Perfect. So we have our form, but this form is just a skeleton, right? I mean, it doesn't really do anything right now. Also, how do you make this form appear on Excel? We need some code for that, right? So just like we inserted the user form, I will right click and insert a module. Think of the module like a sheet. It's just a container where you can put your code. Very simple. I will say sub, which is a subroutine. Give it any name you want. And what will it do? It will say userform1.show. Those of you who do not come from any IT background, when I put a dot, it's called a dot notation, which means that after I put the dot, it shows me all the methods and the objects inside userform1. So it's showing me what all is available in userform1. Right? For example, I can change the scroll, I can change the height, I can change the width, stuff like that. Now I just want to show it, basically make it visible. Show form, user form one dot show. Great. So we have the form, we have the code, but then how does it come? Like I have to click somewhere, right? So I will insert an image. Let me insert my logo. And let me insert this one. And it's really large, so let me make it smaller. Perfect. So how will the user open the form? This image has to become a trigger. So I'll right click, assign a macro. A macro is the same as a VBA code, and we will select the only code that we have. Now, as you can see, this has become a trigger. So when you click on it, the form opens up, right? So that's the first part of this exercise where we learned how to enable the developer tab and essentially create a form. Ask your questions, then I'll show you how to put the code so that the values will come here and the values will then go back to the Excel file. Right? So we'll take a small pause. You can ask your questions.
So can you show the user form part again? How did
I create it?
I mean, after that screen with name, GPI, and submit was created, part after that, this one.
Hold on. See, this is the form that I have, user form 1, right? Is this what you're asking?
This I have created after this. I mean, how to take it into Excel.
Sure. So you have to right click and you have to insert a module, right? So this is my module now. This is my user form. This is my module. And in the module, we just wrote a single line of code saying user form 1 dot show.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Okay. Great. So we have this, and now, of course, we need to connect Excel with that form. So let's go back and we will go to our user form and we will say on the submit, we will double click. So when somebody clicks on the submit button, which is the command button 1, what should happen? The value which I'm putting, let's say I'm putting Havish should come in A2. But how does the code know that A2 is the cell where the name should come? What if there was already a name here, then the value should come in A3? Do you understand the problem? I cannot tell in the code which, I know the column A, but do I know the row? I don't, because the row has to come automatically. The value, the next value will always be +1, the current row. That means the last used row that I have, it will always be +1. Now, how do you know how to get that line of code? See, VBA is a very old language. And the 3 reasons you should learn VBA is, number 1, it's simple to learn. It connects to Excel, so it's much easy because you understand Excel. Learning VBA is not very difficult. You have so much content available on the internet because it's 35 years old. And also, VBA is something that you will learn and it will actually help you. It will be something you can put on your profile. Unlike learning Python and KNIME and whatnot, which you might not end up using, depending on what type of career pursuits you choose, VBA is definitely something that will help you as long as you are alive and breathing and working on Excel, right? Okay, so we want to search for, let me just drink some water first. So we want to search for VBA code 2. This is how you search for a VBA code on the internet to find last used row. That's what we want to do, right? We want to know which is the last used row in my column, which is right now, which is the last used row 2. If there were other names, then the last used row will become 5. We need to find this. And as you can see, there are many websites that talk how to do this. Of course, you will have to train yourself at becoming better at searching, because if you just go randomly searching, you will get lost. There are thousands of websites that have this information. But since, at least for now, you have me, we just have to copy this. We come back and we say, okay, this is how you calculate the last row. In which column? In the A column. But how do you know what the result will come? What the result will come as? So I'll have to put a message box and we say last row. The last row is just a variable that I've given. So you can write anything you want, right? Just a variable. Let's see if it works. Submit, and it tells me 1. Obviously, because 1 is the last used row. If I had a value in, let's say, the 10th row, then it tells me that 10 is the last used row. Now, obviously, if 10 is the last used row, then I know that my next name should go in the 11th row. That means using this last row, let me just comment it. I will say cells, which row and which column. I know the row should be last row plus 1 dot value should be coming from where? It should be coming from my text.name.value. Make sense? And then obviously, one more time, I'll say 2.value is equal to my text GPA.value. Then I'll make some basic cleaning. I'll also say that after the submit happens, please, no, I'll say that, let's say my text name should become null and my text dot GPA dot value should also become null, right? Perfect. And what else can we do? And maybe let's also give a message box to the user saying the name and GPA has been entered successfully, right? Like this. Before we run the code, let's try to see if we can read the code and understand what it is, right? What we are doing is we are first finding the last row because we need to dynamically know which row the next value will come in. Then we are saying that the first column, right? I'm sorry, the column number also I have to put. So the column number is 1 and here the column number is 2, right? And this will be plus 1. We're saying that in the last row plus 1 and the first column, put the name that is coming from the text box, and in the last row plus 1 in the second column, put the GPA value. All engineers would know this, but in case somebody is not an engineer and you haven't done any coding, remember equal to in coding is not equality. We are not testing equality. We are doing an assignment. It's an assignment. So I'm saying that from the right-hand side, the value will be taken and it will be put into the left-hand side, right? And in VBA, like I said, VBA is a very simple language. You don't have double equal tos and triple equal tos like JavaScript, right? And then after the values are put, I want to remove the values that are there so that the user can put the next value. I'm saying null, null. And then I'm also giving a prompt from a good customer user experience to tell the user that you have entered it successfully. So let's see how it works. Havisham Consulting, I say Havish. I say 10, submit. Name and GPA has been entered successfully. Once again, Anmol. And I say 8, entered successfully. You can ask your questions now.
I just had a question, Havish.
Please.
So, are there any use cases where we use this kind of form we make, or I mean, I haven't seen this kind of use case that we use dynamic.
Do you have
in the
any work
corporate
experience?
Yeah, I have worked as a data scientist.
Why would data scientists work on Excel? And even if you're working on Excel, why would you create user forms?
I mean, any particular industry that we use.
Haven't you worked on Flask or Django or whatever it is to create applications?
No,
What if somebody, what if one of the 1 billion people who work on Excel want to create an app on Excel? How do you do that?
I mean, I had never explored the Excel part of it, but yeah, that can be.
These are used everywhere. If you do user form on Excel, if I do an image search, you won't find a lot. I'll tell you I mean, you will find a lot. You can see people have even created entire entry sheets and whatnot, right? I'll give you a couple of examples, right? Now you might say, but why would I need to create an ERP system on Excel? Because MSMEs do not have the sort of money to pay to SAP to create an ERP system. They're not going to pay 1 crore for it, right? So they want to create not a jugaad solution, but a simple, not even a makeshift. They want to create a simple solution that gets the job done for 1/10 of the cost. That's why, we create VBA forms, as you can see.
Right, got it.
Right. Let me show you 2 examples, and let me also see what question is there. how to activate a form on the sheet that is link the image to enter the form. After you have put the code, user form 1.show, simply right click on the image and assign a macro and select the code. Right? You can even assign a macro to a shape. Okay, so 2 examples I wanted to show you. One would be, let me also check the time that we have. Okay, so this is, quite a detailed project. So it's not like a, an overnight form that we have created like what we've done now. These are how you like, these are some HR talent trackers I create for organizations, right? Like this. Now, so I've done this with a bunch of companies, and the point is that you might say, but Havish, why? Like, can't we do this on the cloud, or can't we just purchase something off the shelf or create it? Who's going to create it? Do you have that team? Do you know how much money it will cost you? The first time I did it for a client, a very bare bones, simple one, I charged them 2.8 lakhs, right? HCL for the same thing on the cloud was asking them for 15 lakhs. The client said, we don't need it on the cloud as long as the job is getting done. In fact, they were happier that it was on Excel because in any case, all their data was not on the cloud, it was coming from Excel. So it was much easier for people to put their data on it and work with it and integrate it with other Excel spreadsheets that they had. It's not going to replace other things and it's not going to change the world, but there is a market for it. Like if you look at financial services and consulting firms and professional services, forms are used everywhere. You won't find a lot on the internet. I'll tell you the reason why, because most of these are internal projects, like the one I do for companies. How would you find it out there on the internet? I want to give you one more example, just so that you know that there are different types of forms that can be created, right? Okay, so look at this. Old project, 2017. I was running a firm called Decode Research and Analytics. I was a director there. So what we did was we created an entire purchase order system and a vendor management system for the client. And as you can see, it was completely done on Excel. But we made it look like a application, right? And this is my vendor master. So as you can see, I have my entire vendor master here. If I want to search for a particular person, I can even search like this, right? If I want to edit a record, it will ask me for example, 1 second. If I want to add a record, it will ask me for a password. If I put a wrong password, it will tell me that you only have 2 attempts remaining, even though nothing happens when the attempts are over. But yeah, you get the idea. Then we also had the purchase order. So if you notice, I can click on the PO. I can put in a number. It's all real time. So I put in a number and the PO comes automatically, as like you see now. And if I click on print, it will automatically print all the details. We were working with a company called Spring Overseas. It will print it like this. It's a solution that works, that gets the job done. And they don't want to spend 10, 15x on something where there will be 15 other features which they don't need. It's not that I'm the only person who can do it and I can do it on VBA. Other tools can't do it. It's just a cost differential which is there, right? So there will always be a market for it. And from a financial modeling, spreadsheet modeling perspective, teams that work on modeling and scenario planning and advanced Excel, they have to use forms because for a lot of advanced work, VBA has to be used. Forms is mostly used for aesthetics, but there is a use case for even creating applications on Excel. Right. Good. Anything else? Anyone?
Yeah, I had one doubt. So when I go to my VBA window and right click on VBA project, I'm not able to find user form. I only find module and class module. So what might be the issue? I'm working on a Mac.
Yeah, I hate answering questions around Mac because I don't know what version of Excel are you working on, because Microsoft and Apple have had a love-hate relationship. So initially, Office on Mac used to have a VBA, then they removed it. Then when Satya came back, he again kept it. So if you have the latest version of Excel for the Mac, you will have VBA, but not the object library will be limited. You will not have all the features. And I think user forms are not there, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, not there for the Mac.
Got it.
Okay, good. So we have done formulas, functions. We have seen dynamic arrays. We've seen a little bit of VBA as well. Let me also show you how web apps work, right? So just give me a moment. So just like you have applications on Android and iOS, so let's say you want to create an application in Excel, we will create an application on JavaScript, right? Using Visual Studio or VS Code, whatever it is, any IDE. And how do you access these applications? You have to go to Insert, then you have to go to Add-ins. And these are add-ins that are available both on Excel Online. Like VBA is not available online, but add-ins are available. Web add-ins, web apps are available both on the local Excel installation as well as on the cloud. As you can see, these are just apps. So I also have 2 apps here. So I'm very proud of it. So there are only 500 odd apps on the Excel Office store in the world, just 500. Okay, and I have 2 of them. Right, very simple add-ins. So just type my name here. I have one add-in for a stopwatch, the other for a swap case, switching from lower to uppercase. So stopwatch for Excel, this is how it works. This add-in is essentially a stopwatch that runs inside your sheet. And what it does is that, let's say I'm working and I want to measure what is the amount of time I'm taking on a certain task. I can just click on the stopwatch and it just works, right? Nothing fancy. But then there is a use case for it. A lot of my clients said, Havish, we use if you use the clock, if you use the stopwatch you have on as a separate application, then you have to press Alt Tab, then you forget about it. Even if you have a phone, it's very distracting because then you have to go to your phone. So there is a use case for having a stopwatch directly working inside Excel, right? Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of my clients are super happy. It doesn't, again, it's not going to change the world, but there is a use case for this, right? Okay, but what is it? Like, how is it working? Is it VBA? Is it Excel formulas? There must be something at the back end, right? I don't know how many of you know HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I mean, how many of you know how the web works? Your browser, Google Chrome, is a development environment, correct? Which means that, let's say I'm working on Visual Studio. We know that's an integrated development environment. Or let's say I'm working on Visual Studio Code, right? But your browser is also a development environment in the sense that if I go to Google, right, and I don't like that the fact that it says Google search, so I can just right click, I can go to inspect, and it shows me all the code at the backend. So when it says Google search here, right, I just have to identify that part that says Google search, which is the label, right? And if I double click on the search and I say, you know what, I don't want to call it Google search, I want to call it Havish search, right? I can just press enter, and let me change it here as well. And it changes. So some of you I assume know how web works. Those of you who don't know how the web works, the web is just script, right? It's just code written in HTML. It has been made beautiful by CSS, and then it has been made dynamic by JavaScript. That's how these 3 go together. And your browser is a development environment because you can see everything here. You can make changes here, right? Everything works. In fact, if you go to the console window at the bottom, you can even write stuff here, right? So I can write, let's say 1 + 1, and it tells me the result is 2. I mean, nothing fancy, but this is a development environment that you have, right? Okay, now that we understand this, let's go back to Excel. Okay, so let's go back to Excel. Now this window that you see where the stopwatch is what? It is a web page that is being rendered on your Google spreadsheet, on your spreadsheet. It's very cool, right? You're working on Excel on your desktop, and it's a web page that is being rendered inside your sheet, and it is working on top of your sheet. So if I right click and inspect, you can actually see all the code behind it, right? So this is my Excel. My Excel has a stopwatch, and my stopwatch has some code behind it, which you can see here. Okay. Yeah, so that is what it is. Let me show you another one. So insert, again, I go back to the store, and let me show you the people graph, right? Created by Microsoft. The people graph is a fancy chart that you have, much better than the inbuilt ones. As you can see, I have a beautiful chart here. I can connect it to my own data. So if I say HAT and I write some numbers, so I say 10, 30, and 20, I can just select this data on the chart. So I'll say select my data, create, and it creates a chart for me. And then you have a bunch of options available. So you have different themes and colors and whatnot. And how is all this working? Because you're essentially using the power of the web. You're using HTML and CSS for this, right? So you will have amazing things available. For example, some people have created, I think, stock connectors, right? You have crypto sheets. Alpha Vantage has free APIs available. Even though it's paid, there are some free APIs available. You have SAP that has just created an add-in for Excel. So the fact that Excel is now not just sheets and VBA and formulas, it's literally a platform where developers can create apps, just makes it something entirely different, right? And this is 100% uniform. So apps will work on all devices. I mean, not on the mobile, obviously, because of the amount of space not being there. Otherwise, it can work on mobile. It's just that the space is a constraint. But it works on iPad. It works on Excel Online. It works on Excel Desktop. So there's complete uniformity between all these platforms. Right? Okay, quick. Any question? Because after this, I want to show you the script editor.
I had a query. In my previous workplace, basically, we used to mail branch-wise data to different branches. So basically, there used to be sales data as per every channel partner and some more details. But the categories used to be the same and with some comments. So I had tried a code in VBA where we could automatically put that data from Excel to Outlook, but it did not work out well. So is it possible to do, and I mean, how to go about it?
How to connect Excel to Outlook?
Yes. And
Yeah,
dynamically send data.
Yeah, so just go to Ron De Bruin website. He's the leading expert in the world. I mean, don't be turned off by the website. I know it seems as if it's 20 years old, but he's the leading Excel Outlook automation guy in the world, right? And everything that you need will be available on the website. Of course, you'll have to do a little bit of searching, but as you can see, he has covered all these things, right?
Thank you.
I'll just share the link with you. All right, great. Now, the problem with VBA is that it's very important, as I have proven to you, especially in finance. But then VBA doesn't work on the cloud, which is a big limitation. And to make VBA work on the cloud is where we need something called TypeScript, which is a language based on JavaScript. It has been created and it is being maintained by Microsoft, right? How does data cleaning work in Excel and how difficult or easy it is? See, you have all the things that you would expect. You have your left function, right function, upper, lower, middle, length, find, repeat, substitute, stuff like that. How much more easier it is? I can't really answer that, because if your data is already on Excel, nobody's going to put it on Python and use NumPy and Pandas and bring it back to Excel. It just doesn't make any sense, right? If your data is on the SQL server and you want to make a change, perhaps it makes sense to not use Excel as a part of the process. But then if your end result is going to be an Excel file, people will say, you know what, I will fight with Excel, even if Excel does not have all the libraries available in Python. Excel is never going to compete in terms of the amount of features it has, right? But because of the ease of usability and the amount of ready-made solutions you already have available, you don't want to fix something that isn't broken. So if your last 3 years of work has happened on Excel, suddenly you can't go to your manager and say, boss, leave Excel. I want to change the organization to Python. You will get sacked. So there are a lot of factors in terms of why Excel still continues to be what it is, right? And remember, Excel now also has some AI and ML features, which I wasn't planning to show to you, but since I mentioned it, I should. So, for example, sentiment analysis has been added, and Excel also has an AI feature using Microsoft Cognitive Services. Long story short, you have a data set. I have a data set with 50,000 records, and I don't know how many columns are there, 15 columns. And you know what I can do? With the data set, I don't have to create a pivot table anymore. All I have to do is to go to home and click on analyze data. So analyze data will look for patterns in my data. Just see how it works. Analyze data. So right now my data is being sent to the cloud. Microsoft is using its processing power and its computing prowess to create a live connection with my data. What that means is it has saved a copy of my data on the cloud. Obviously it's encrypted, and I can ask a question on my system, but the computing will not happen on my system. The computing will happen on the cloud and it will give me the result on Excel. It all sounds very fancy. Let me show you how it works. If I say, what is my total sales? Enter. It tells me my total sales. Havish, your total sales is $12.64 million. I say, okay, can you show me my profit for each segment? It says fine, consumer, corporate, home office. Then I say, no, but I just want to see it for India only, right? And it says fine, this is the data for India only. Very cool, right? And all of this is natural language processing, right? Which is also an area associated with AI and ML. And it's a cross-disciplinary area which has a lot of different aspects to it. So not just AI and ML, but also linguistics. But this is natural language processing. You don't need to learn the exact query or the exact syntax. You can just ask a natural question and it will give you the answer. Yeah. I mean, they've just got started. Imagine what will happen in the next. For 35 years, we had pivots. Everybody used that, right? And this is a game changer because this is going to get incrementally changed every week. Every week, they're going to add more and more features to it, right? And there will be a point where it will give you automatic suggestions. Even now it does. If you notice, it is automatically giving me suggestions. How many different types of markets are there? So we have 5 markets with us. I say, no, tell me how many countries are there. I can say, okay, how many different types of country are there? And it tells me I have 165 countries. Can you imagine the amount of time people spend selecting a column, removing the duplicate, doing a count? That's how you would do it, right? If I ask you, can you tell me how many unique countries I have? How will you find it? There are a bunch of countries. You will first have to copy the data, then you will have to do remove duplicate, then you'll have to do equal to count, correct? Count A. You don't have to do anything. You can just ask a question, right? And all of this has happened in the last around 24 months or so, right? So this wasn't there 2 years back. So yeah, but it is now there and it's available in Microsoft 365. This will never be available for any perpetual license. So Office 2021 will not have it because Microsoft's proposition is that you need to be connected to the cloud for this. And obviously you need to have an active internet connection for this to work, right? Okay, great. So when we say automated AI, automated ML, what does it mean? This is what it means, that you don't need to be a developer to utilize, like everybody does not know how to go to Python and how to do NLTK to do sentiment analysis, no? So I can just go to insert add-ins and download an app for anything I require. So very excited to see what will happen in the next few quarters. Shikhar, you might still not have these features because organizations take a lot of time to get new features because there are IT issues and they have to be checked and many other factors are there. So even if you have Office 365, there is a possibility that it is either blocked, like PwC and EY has blocked it. They don't give their employees access to it. And there might be a possibility that they haven't rolled it out yet. They might be rolling it out in the future, right? So you'll have to check with them. I can't answer that for you. Okay, so it's 8:40. Let me also quickly show you how TypeScript works, right? All right, so I go to office.com. By the way, you can also create a free account on office.com. The only limitation would be that you will not be able to save your files. You can only save it on the cloud. You can't save a local copy, right? But I really feel you should get Microsoft 365. It will cost you 4,299 rupees per year or 420 rupees per month. So cancel the Netflix, get a Microsoft 365. You will thank me later, right? So let's come to Excel and I will open a blank workbook. And as you can see here also we have the apps. So I can go to insert and Office add-ins. Is Excel Online exactly the same as Excel Desktop? Not quite. In fact, till about 2 years back, Excel Online used to be very, very bad, right? Google Sheets kept on adding more and more features, even though they never captured much market share. Excel Online was just there, because Microsoft users are predominantly on-premise, they're not on the cloud. So there was no need, right, for Microsoft to really put in a lot of attention to online, even though online has been there for a very long time. In the last 18, 24 months, they have gone bonkers. Every week, every month, there will be some change or the other that happens. And they're trying to build it to a point where it is at par with desktop, right? Not every single thing that you find in the local version will be available here. Small things will not be available, which sometimes are very irritating. But most of the important things that you expect work properly, right? For example, Office add-ins are there. Then you also have something called Automate. Automate is only available to business users of Excel, right? So business users means you have to get an official domain, like mine is at hmadconsulting.on Microsoft. So you'll have to get a business account. But Automate is basically the VBA alternative for the cloud. Let me show you how it works. I go to record actions and it says recording. Okay, so I'm going to write name, sales, and then I say Havish, Anmol, and then Talha, right? Then I say 30, 10, and 20. And I also want to find the sum of all these numbers, correct? And I make it bold as well. And maybe let's make a chart. So I'll select it and I will insert a simple chart. So let's just make a pie chart. Even though I hate pie charts, let's make a pie chart. After everything is done, I will stop my recording. And as I'm sure you would have guessed by now, the next time I want to repeat the same action, all I have to do is I have to click on run. And you can see that just like you do it on VBA, it will run all the actions and you will get the same result, right? And how does the code look? This is TypeScript, okay? So TypeScript is a language that is very similar. It's based on JavaScript, so it's syntactically the same. And this is how it works. Like I said, let's try to read it, even if you don't understand all of it. Even I would not understand every single small thing, but let's try to see how much we can grasp. First, we have to get an entry point in Excel. Excel is our object, so we have to enter that object. How do we do that? We create a function where we are entering, where we are entering Excel script.workbook. After that, we have to declare a variable, which is my selected sheet. In VBA, you don't have to declare the selected sheet because your selected sheet is an active sheet. In TypeScript, you have to. So you say workbook.getActive worksheet. And since it's based on JavaScript, it is JavaScript sort of, you notice there is a semicolon at the end after every line. The rest is simple. In selected sheet get range, first we are taking the range A1 to B5, and this is the values I'm putting. Name says Havish 30, Anmol 10, Talha 20. There is a null value, remember, and then we have the formula. After that, this is the comment in green. After that, in B5, we are making it bold. And then we are...
Sorry to interrupt you. Your screen is not visible for us. It says has started screen sharing. It's stuck there.
I don't know. I'll stop it and reshare it. Tell me if it is visible now.
Yes, it's visible now. Thank you.
It is?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, maybe when I zoom in, it does not appear properly. Let me just quickly take a screenshot. 1 second. And show it to you like this. Okay, so this is how the code looks. Everyone. Okay. So very simple. We are taking the active worksheet. In A1 to B5, we are putting in the values and the formula. B5 is getting bold. And then we're also adding a simple chart here, right? Selecting the data sources A1 to B5. So it's not super difficult. Of course, it's a learning curve and you have to spend time learning the object model and the syntax and stuff like that. That's why I'm telling you, start your coding journey. Like, because I started learning VBA at the age of 27, which was very late. I'm still so happy I took that call because I started learning VBA in 14. 17, I started learning Python. 18, I started Power Query, M. Then 19, I started DAX. Last year, 2020, I've done JavaScript, TypeScript. This year, I'm doing SQL, right? R also I started last year. So this is how it happens, no? Nobody learns everything in one day. It happens over a period of time. Good. Any questions on this, anyone?
Swami had a question in the chat. So he says for
Let me check.
collaborating. Yeah.
For collaborating, Google Sheets is very elegant. The Office 365 caught up. More or less. I don't think there is anything important in Google Sheets. Like I said, Microsoft took a while, took a long time, and people like me hated it because unfortunately my clients still, some of them, like 1 out of 100 clients will still go to Google Sheets for specific tasks. Now, nearly everything that you can do, collaborative work, 5 people concurrently working, everything that you can do on Google Sheets works on Excel Online as well. So that differentiating factor really is not there anymore. Okay, good. Let me close this.
Havish, I have a question. Go ahead.
Tell me.
So TypeScript is also used for the custom visuals in Power BI. So how do we integrate that here? Can we create any custom visuals in case of Excel?
When you're making a web app, you can't directly, because there's no environment, right? Where do you put the TypeScript code inside Excel directly, like you do with the VBA code? So the process is that you have to first create a web app, and that web app can be put on top, like the people graph that I showed you. Like that, you can create your custom visuals.
No, but where do we write the code? Like there we used to write in the VS Code. Here, how do we write the code in the TypeScript?
Show you. So this is my, where's the stopwatch? Strange. Is this the one? March 26th? Anyway, doesn't matter. See, let me just open the entire thing. Otherwise, it will take time to search for it. This is my code, right? So this is my JavaScript that I've written. This is my HTML, and this is my CSS for the app that I've created, right? And then there is something called side loading. So if you don't want to publish it to this, by the way, publishing it on the store is free of cost, but you still need to have a Microsoft developer account. And there is a process, they have to approve it. You can't just publish it like you do on Android, right? So there is a strict approval process. Like mine got rejected a couple of times. I had to figure out how to get it approved. But you can also side load it, which means that on your system or for your clients, only on their systems, you can not circumvent it. There is a process of doing it. You can create a shared folder, a network folder, and you can set it up on only the systems that you want. Okay, I am not going to talk about Power Query and Power Pivot in detail, so we don't have that amount of time, but I still want to give you a quick example of how they work, right? So this is the problem statement that we have. There's a folder which has 3 files in it, 13, 14, 15. And the problem is that I have my data scattered across 3 files. Maybe the file size was very large, or I got it from different people, whatever the reason might be. But for me, it's irritating because I still have to open every one and copy paste it into a single file. It's a completely error-prone process and not a process that anybody would be excited about. How do we do this? I will go to Excel. And we will go to the data tab. And in the data tab, we have something called get and transform data. Get and transform data is Power Query, basically, right? I don't know why they have made it so confusing. They've given it 2 different names, but it's get and transform data. But the tool, the technology they're using is called Power Query, which is the same that you have in Power BI as well. It's also available on the cloud, right? So as you can see, it allows you to connect to different types of data sets and sources. So I can connect to files, different types of databases, Microsoft Cloud, Power BI directly, online services, random other sources as well, right? For now, I want to connect to a folder. So I'll go to File and select a folder, which is a bunch of files. And the folder is on my desktop. So I'll quickly select that. 23rd May, files, sales, and old, right? it confirms to me that yes, Havish, there are 3 files in that folder which we want to combine. So combine and transform. And then I select the sheet. There's only one sheet in all the 3 files, and I click on OK. And you know what? That's it. We just have to select the folder, the sheet, and a new window opens up called the Power Query Editor. And if you look at the first column, you will notice that all the 3 files have been combined. How cool is that? Right? No manual copy and paste. And there could have been 15 files in that folder, or 15 PDFs in that folder, or 15 CSV files in that folder. And without having to move a finger, it will combine everything for you very neatly. Right? I'm sorry, what's that, Shikhar? I've added the monthly sales data to the legacy data for 2 years. All right, so close and load, and the data comes back to Excel. But what will happen, like right now we have 13, 14, 15, right? Now what happens when 2016 gets added? All I have to do is put the file in the same folder as sales. And just like you refresh a pivot table, you can right click and refresh, and instantaneously 2016 also gets updated. So it's a form of automation that you're creating, right? Now the next part is, I have the customer ID. I'm sorry, I'm going a little fast, but I hope you are still able to follow at a very high level what I'm doing. In any case, I'll be sharing resources with you. I already have. And for any questions, you can come back to me, right? So I have the customer ID, but I don't have the customer name because that is in a different file. So I will go to insert, I'll go to data, and I'll insert the new Excel workbook because my names are in a separate file, which is this one. Now, usually what do? We do a VLOOKUP, correct? But then VLOOKUP means you have to do a VLOOKUP with all the different files, plus it's a formula, you have to copy and paste it. Errors might happen. If new data comes in, you have to copy paste the formula. I don't want to go through all that hassle. So what we are doing is we will simply select the list of names, and there's a small problem, which is that the names are not correct. It is surname, comma, first name. It should be first name, surname, right? How do I fix it? In Excel, you would have used find, left, right, mid, whatnot. Long, it's a possible result, but it's not an easy formula. You will have to use 3-4 functions for it to replace the order, to swap it. In Power Query, we have this wonderful tool called column from examples, which works the way machine learning works. It's not machine learning, but the concept is the same. You have to take a trained data, you have to test it, and then you have to run it. Let's see how it works. I will select column from examples, and then it says, fine, Havish, give me some sample values, which is like your training data. So I say, okay, my sample I'm giving you, this is supervised learning, right? So I'm giving it Darren, and it says, fine, Havish, this is the test. It is giving me all the possible results, and as you can see, it is extracting the first name for me. If I give it parse, it will give me the surname, works perfectly. But the moment I give it Darren parse, you notice that it doesn't understand. Power Query doesn't know what I want because the training data is insufficient. It says, please enter some more sample values. So I'll have to give it one more sample. So I will say fill in a Uber. And you notice the moment I give it another sample, voila, it gives me the result. How cool is that? Without having to write, learn, experiment, hit and try any formulas. I just have to give it some samples and it automatically constructs the formula for me. And you notice the formula that it has built is quite complex. Look at this. It's quite a complex formula. This is not TypeScript. This is not Excel. This is a completely different language called M, just the letter M, which is Power Query, right? It's a new language. You have to learn it independently if you want to work with Power Query, right? And it's fantastic, right? It gets the job done. Vidya, think of column from examples as Flashfill and steroids. It's 1,000 times more powerful than Flashfill. But you're absolutely right. At least for this particular instance, what I've shown you, if you had done this with Flashfill, 100% it would have worked. But the limitation is that if you get new records, you again have to press Ctrl-E. The limitation is that if any data changes, you again have to refresh it. And the limitation is that it will give you the answer, but it will not give you a formula. So you don't really know how it managed to do it, right? But if you're only interested in the result, yes, Flashfill will work, but Flashfill is like a baby. This is 1,000 times more powerful. Right? All right, so I don't really need this column, so I'll delete it. And I will call this name. But the problem is, everybody, that I have two separate tables now, right? I have old, which is the sales data, and I have ID and name, which is the name. How do I merge both of them? Now, most of you will say VLOOKUP, but I don't want to go down that road, because the problem is VLOOKUP means new column, formula, copy, paste. Right? And I don't really want to go through that road. I want to make it into a relational database. I want to connect the two data sets together. To do this, we use something called Power Pivot. Power Pivot is available on Excel 2016 and 19, right? You just have to enable it. You can Google how to enable it. Just a button you have to click on. But before we go to Power Pivot, I have to send my data to pivot table. We all know how to make a pivot. Insert, pivot. But you know what? I know that this data has to be connected to another data set. So I will select this option called add this data to the data model. All right. Okay. Once again, when I select the other table, this time also when I select a pivot table, I will say, no, this is not independent, add it to the data model. What this means is that I can access both the data sets together in a combined pivot table. This feature has been there in Excel for nearly 10 years. And most of you have work experience, and I'm sure I can guarantee that nobody knew this, that you can have multiple data sets combined into a single pivot table. It's just one of those things, it has been there in some form or fashion for 10 years, and people have never used it. But anyway, now is the time for you to start learning how to use it. So we select the name here, and we select the sales here. But there's a small problem, which is that it will not work because these are different data sets, right? There is no connection between them. And now we have to go to Power Pivot. We go to Manage, and like you create a relationship on Access or SQL or Python or whatever it is, you go to the diagram view, and I can simply create a relationship between my CID and my customer ID by dragging and dropping like this. That's it. You have created your relational database, close it, and imagine this. You know where these numbers are coming from? Aaron Bergman 886 is coming from 5 files. Aaron is coming from my ID and name sheet, my workbook, and the 886 is actually an aggregation or summation of values from 4 different files. How cool is that? 5 files have been combined into a single file. And when you go to Power Pivot, you will notice that you can not just Excel files, you can even connect to SQL Server, Access. You can even connect to other types of data sources, right? For example, I can connect to Azure if I want to. I can even connect to, Oracle databases, stuff like that. And I'm not doing calculations now, but there's something called measures here, which you can watch in my video that I've shared. This measures that you're writing will be DAX, which is how you create calculations for Power Pivot. It's the new language now. So let me quickly wrap up everything for you, what we have done. Excel, one of the biggest changes is formulas and functions, dynamic arrays that you have to learn. VBA is how Excel has always worked on. It still continues to work on VBA at the backend. Power Query uses M. Power Query is an ETL tool. Power Pivot is a database tool, right? Which is an extension of pivot tables, and it uses a language called DAX, Data Analysis Expressions. The same language works on SQL Server as well. The alternative to VBA for the cloud is TypeScript, and Web Apps uses JavaScript, which are add-ins applications that you're creating on Excel. I'm not doing Power Apps. You can just Google it, what PowerFX is. It's very new. It's just 3 months old. PowerFX is basically a low-code platform where with minimal coding, you can create applications. Right? I'm not doing that, but make sure to Google it. It's very new, but the sooner you start learning it, the sooner you will understand it. Good. Any questions, anyone?
Havish, I have a question.
Yes.
So when we did the concept for the filters in the dynamic arrays, so the other most common thing is actually sorting. So do dynamic arrays also solve that? Do they have a sorting part to it?
You do. Sort and sort by. That problem is also solved. You can dynamically sort now.
Okay.
You can sort as per ascending, descending. You can sort as per another array. So you can say that I want to sort these values as per another corresponding table. Everything is there. Great. What else?
So, I mean, if anyone in the batch has any questions, you might just feel free to unmute yourself. We'll wait for a minute and then we'll wrap up the session. So, I guess that's it, Havish. Thank you so much for this mesmerizing session, I must say. It was a very engaging 1 hour, and I guess a lot of us got to know the real potential of Excel today. You have really opened up a thinking, got us to know the magical functionalities of Excel. As a token of gratitude, I would just like to request the batch to open their videos for a couple of minutes so that we can have a group screenshot. So I'll wait for a minute. Kapil or Sumant, you may just take this screenshot here and let me. Kapil, are we done here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, Manan.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Havish. We are definitely looking forward to a long-term engagement with you and hosting such insightful sessions for the whole batch. I request the batch to drop off. Thank you so much for your patience and attending this lecture. Havish, can you please wait for a couple of minutes with the analytics club?
Sure.
I guess everyone has.
Yeah.
We have already started receiving a lot of good feedbacks over messages, WhatsApp about how great the session was. So thank you so much.